Okay, let's go to the next one. How many people distributed and multiplied it to each one? Today we're going to do it a little differently. Who can raise their hand and tell me what is the opposite, what does distribute mean? Raising your hand. What am I doing to each number, Taylor? So what's the inverse of that? Divide. So let's just divide 5 out, because instead of multiplying, since that's the only thing I'm doing, today we're going to focus on dividing that number out. And so that gets rid of that 5. And I get x minus 2 equals, what's 20 divided by 5? 4. But did I get x by itself? No. Gabby, how do I get x by itself? Add 2. And I end up getting x equals what? 6. How could I check my work? Plug it in, plug it in. So remember, PEMDAS, parentheses comes first. What's 6 minus 2? 4. Times 5? 20. And so I know I did it correctly. Here's my smiley face. Last one. Warren, how do I get x by itself here?
You squared.
This is already squared, so what do I do?
You do the square root.
Square root. Beautiful. So to undo a square, I do the square root. And what do I end up getting? 5. But there's also another number I get. So I know 5 times 5 equals 25, right? Because that's why it's one of my answers. What about a negative times a negative? What do I get? A positive, right? So my answer is 5, and it's also negative 5. Because negative 5 squared also equals 25. So both of those answers are correct, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And so if you find you understood this lesson is probably one of the easiest. It should be a piece of cake for you. Does anyone have any questions yet? No? Okay. So I'm going to show you the lesson, just giving you 3 examples, and then you're going to practice. So right here. And then you have the option, you can either start on your Excel if you're like, hey, Ms. K, I don't have a lot of stamps. You can get some stamps doing the scavenger hunt out there. It's a quick little thing. And then you have your mini quiz and then your agenda stamp, just like we always do. Okay, so I'm going to start with our little survival guide. So write down what's in red. So when we were taking the square root, we just talked about you must write the positive and the negative. You can use like a plus sign and a minus sign if you don't have room, but we take the positive and the negative. So just like we found our x-intercepts all last class, right? This is a different way to do it, and it's the easiest way. But I only could do it, see how there's no middle term here? There's no like number with x next to it. Does everyone see that? Like it's not written like ax squared plus bx plus c. There's only an ax squared and a number. If you see something like that, you know your life is going to be a whole lot easier because you don't need that. Oh. So does everyone have that down? The red and the black up there. So basically, when there's no b value, or the equation can be written as like an x squared on one side and an upper on the other. On that little sheet. That's on your desk. Yep. And so the same way that we just did the bell ringer is the same way for the minutes. So it's not much different. So even if that was just x, right? I need to move that 180 over. Alana, how do I do that? Add 180, beautiful. Go ahead and do that. These are just the 3 type of problems we're going to see today. And I end up getting 5x squared equals what? 180. I don't know what's wrong with this board today. So write that down in the first box. Then Warren, how do I get rid of that 5? Divide it, right? And I end up getting x squared equals, when you divide it, you end up getting 36. Last thing, Gabby, how do I undo a square? Square root. What is the square root of 36?
6.
And? Beautiful. So x equals 6, and x also equals negative 6. Those are your 2 x-intercepts. So you get x is 6, so you do 6 comma 0, and negative 6 comma 0. So this makes your life a whole lot easier. Sometimes they're not going to be whole numbers, sometimes they're going to be decimals, but that's fine. If you see there's no middle term, like up here, you know your life's going to be a whole lot easier. Does that make sense? That's like the gist of the lesson. Yeah.
Why did you write down both the negative and positive?
Because when I take the square root of a number, it's both the positive and negative. Because what's negative, if I plug in -6 right here, what's -6 times -6? Positive 36. And that's why I have to write both down. Does that make sense? Okay, next one's even easier. So, Kaylee, what do I do first here? So the square root's right there, but what should I do before that square root that we did right here? Divide, right? So let's divide first. Because square root would be easier, because that is a perfect square, but I have to divide first, get rid of that clingy little 3, right? And I end up getting x squared equals 12. Then we square root, right? But is 12 a perfect square? Right? A lot of people are putting 6, but remember, it's what multiplies to itself. So does everyone know how to type it in your calculator? You hit that blue button, so it says second, and then you hit x squared, and you put 12. Or if you have like your phone, you need to make sure you can rotate it this way if you have an iPhone, and it has a little symbol that looks like this on your iPhone. And that means take the square root. So if you have an iPhone, if you have to go this way or a regular phone, and this one is usually the button. So who could tell me what is the square root of 12? 3.46. Let's round to the nearest 10. So what would that 4 round to? 5. So let's use 3.5, and what else would it be? Negative. Beautiful. Negative 3.5. And so I get 3.5, comma 0, and negative 3.5. Those are my two x-intercepts. That's where it hits the ground, right? Now, before I do this third one, I want to do an easier one on the worksheet, because some people are getting confused with this one. This is the hardest you'll get today. But before we do that one, let's go to number 7 on that practice worksheet. So does everyone see that, number 7? So it looks something, does everyone have that down? I'm going to put it back up. Oh, you don't have the worksheet. Okay. It's right on that podium right there. This next row. So go to number 7. It looks like this. It looks like this on your practice worksheet. So does everyone see that, number 7? So I see Kirsten already getting started. So Kirsten, what are you starting to do already? Divide by 2, right? So I can't touch anything until I get rid of that 2. And I end up getting x minus 3 squared equals what? 6. Beautiful. Now, can I touch that parentheses if that square is right there? How do I get rid of the square? Square root, right? So let's take the square root of both sides. So that square gets rid of this. And I end up, what's in the parentheses left? X minus what? 3. We're going to write that twice. Because there's 2 answers to square root of 6. What is it? 2.5. What's the other one? Negative 2.5. So there will be one question. Your mini quiz is 2 questions. One looks like this, and one looks like the last one we did. That's it. This is like what I want you getting up to. Yes. If you distribute, the thing is remember how if I have this squared, what does that really mean? Like if I had something like this, right? That's a good question. Does that mean I could square each one? Or what does it mean?
It means that the whole thing is squared.
I write it and I'm multiplying it by what? Itself, right? And so if we did it that way, we would end up with a polynomial and we could solve it this way. So, and then that 2 means I factored out the 2. Remember what we've been doing? So like if you divide all 3 numbers, like right here, by a certain number, that number goes on the outside. That's why that number's out there right there. So if you did that, you would have to do way more work, and you don't want to do that. You could do that, refactor, and you'll get the same exact answers, right, Elijah? That's up here, but you don't need to do all this. So So when it's in that form, this is a lot easier. Now, how do I get x by itself? Add 3, right here with my two things. Most people let their answer like this. Make sure you're getting x alone. And what do you end up getting? X equals what? This is 2.5. 5.5? And what's this one? So if I want to write them like coordinates, they would look like this. I'm just having you guys practice writing them in coordinates because I want you to know that we're solving for the what intercepts? The x. I just want to get you guys used to that.
So on Excel, we have to write it as.
No. They're just going to, on the IXL, we'll just put that. And they'll ask for 2 answers, so that you would have to write that one and that one. Yeah.
Are we ever gonna have to apply this to
Because eventually we will, because these are your what? They're your x intercepts. So like if I were to graph this, I would go to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's 5.5, and this one's 0.5. So eventually you're gonna have to graph so it looks like that. But not yet. That's the point of this. So I'm like leading up to that. That's why this unit's not even done till March 1st. So we have a whole nother month and we're leading up to what you're saying. Like that's the last hurrah, right? So almost the whole month is practicing getting your x intercepts because they're important. Does everyone know why your x intercepts are important? Because like if you're doing a parabola, right? So if I'm throwing something to Elijah, right? Where I am and where Elijah is and catches it, those are our x intercepts. It's how far away something is from something else, right? So like if here's me, it would have to be the other way. Here's Elijah. It's how far are we on this coordinate plane. That's why it's important. So that guy I was talking about, that like, remember did I tell you guys that one of my friend's jobs, he works for the United States and he blocks missiles. So he needs to figure out, okay, if I'm going to send something up in outer space to block a missile from a different country, first I need to know where I need to stand to block that missile, and I need to know once it hits it, where is it going to land, right? Even when you're skydiving, like if you're skydiving, you can't just land in the middle of a house, right? You probably get really hurt. So the whole thing with those like parabolas is like, how could I jump, and where should I put the plane so that you land exactly where I want you to? Does that make sense? Because I had trouble with parabolas too when I was in high school because I was like, when in the world would I ever use this? So basically, those are the type of things that people have to figure out in order to get it done, right? In order to have those experiences. Okay, so everyone gets this right here. The last thing on IXL, they're going to have you, so that was a good question, Gabby. On the IXL, they're going to have you put this as a fraction. And so does everyone know how to use your calculator to put this as a fraction?
Yeah, I know.
So if you need to, you can even write this down somewhere. You're going to type in, so like if I want to put 5.5 in a fraction, I put 5.5 instead of going through all the trouble dividing and all that. And then you click that math button. So you can put this in your calculator cheat sheets too. So in that front page, we did calculator cheat sheets. We put the number, math, and do you guys see it says like FRAC, I think, fraction? And then you just click enter a few times, and it will give it to you as a fraction. Do you guys see that? Yeah. Yeah, so if like I wanted to get this answer on IXL, they want you to get it as a fraction. And so if you got a decimal answer, in that yellow calculator, you can just type that in, click that math button on your calculator, and click enter on fractions. Click enter a couple times, and it will give it to you as a fraction. Does that make sense?
Well,
You want to try?
I'm gonna ask, why did you write x minus b plus?
Good question. Because this is what's left in here, right? X minus 3. I took away that square. When by square rooting, I take away the square. And so what's left in here is x minus 3. But the problem is, the reason I can't write it once is there's 2 answers to square root of 6. It's the positive answer and the negative answer. So I had to write it 2 different times in order to incorporate this one because there's 2 answers. Does that make sense? Good question. Any other questions on this one before we do the last one on that little sheet? Okay, let's go to that little sheet. Like our survival guide right here. I'm showing you the last thing. You can always do that little fraction cheat sheet I showed you, but the thing is on your milestone, half your test is non-calculated. So I always want to prepare you in case you don't have that little cheat sheet where you click math and it turns it into a fraction, how to go about doing this. And so the first part's the same. You can raise your hand and tell me, what do I do for this first part? Zaria. Divide by 4. And so if you have that calculator, I could just do 9 divided by 4 in my calculator and get a decimal, right? But this is how they may want you to do it in case you don't have a calculator. Do you see how these both are perfect squares? Like, what's the square root of 9? What's the square root of 4? They may want you to keep it as a fraction like that. So basically, the next step, how do I get rid of this square? Square root. And so when I square it, that just means I square each individual number. So you would get x minus 5, and just like Mesa was saying, we write it twice because there's 2 answers. What is the square root of 9? And what's the square root of 4? 2. So it's 3 over 2. What also is it? Negative 3 over 2. And you can turn it to a decimal. That's fine. If you want to do it the other way, it would be x minus 5 equals 1.5. You put that in your calculator. And x minus 5 equals negative 1.5. I just want to show you, because in case that comes up, how you get the radicals of perfect squares. Okay, am I done though? How do I get x by itself? Add 5. So when you add 5 to both sides, or it's being funky, this one I end up getting what? What's 1 plus 5? 6. So it's 6.5 comma 0. And what does this one end up being? What's negative 1.5 plus 5? Or 5 minus 1.5? Not 4, but 3.5. So it's like you have $5, but you spent $1.50. You have $3.50 left. Does that make sense? So see how this one, like our last thing we do is square root, right? Right here, like these two. See how the last thing we did was square root? Then it will be the positive and the negative. But this wasn't. It was actually in the middle of our problem. So that's why we're going to end up with 2 different ones. Just like when you factor, right? Usually the numbers aren't the same. But you go get 5 and 6, 4 and negative 2. That's usually how it is. So this is easier, but this one, you will get different x-intercepts. Okay, last thing I want to teach you, and this is the last thing. It's not important. This is going to be extra credit on your quiz today. This is a different lesson. It's actually around 4.10, 4.11, but it is on your iExcel, so I want to make sure you know how to do it when you get to it. And so what I mean, so at the bottom of your notebook or at the bottom of that page, it's not a lot of work because it's not like you only need like a little margin. Like if you have this much, like Peyton, like this much right here, that's fine. Or write it on the bottom of the notebook. So write those 3 things out: 2 real solutions, 1 real solution, and no real solution. So a lot of you, I think, are going to Algebra 2 next year. A lot of that will be based on this no real solution. And so I'll show you what that looks like. So first of all, what does solution stand for? X-intercept. Beautiful. So these are talking about your x-intercepts. So this one's saying it has 2 x-intercepts. So it looks something like this, right? All right. See how it hits the x-axis twice? Like right there? So basically, all of these, we got 2 answers, right? The reason is when I have to take the square root, it has to be a positive number. If it's a positive number, I know I'm getting 2 answers because you're going to get 2 x-intercepts. So that's all you need to draw. 2 real solutions just means it's hitting it twice, and it's any positive number. It could be 150, it could be 0.5. Any positive number will get you 2 answers. No real solution looks something like this, and you'll be focusing on this now for 2. It's like a parabola floating up in space. See how it doesn't hit the x-intercept? You guys see that? Now, type in square root of negative 36 in your calculator, and tell me what you get. What's it say? Error, or like something like that, like can't do if you use your phone. you can't take a negative square root, right? Because there's nothing I can multiply to itself to get a negative number, because they need to be opposite signs. So any negative number that's in here is going to have no solution. So any negative number, he's sad, he doesn't have a solution. Boo-hoo. One real solution, there's one number that if I take the square root, there is no negative and positive. Which number doesn't have a sign? 0, right? 0, I can't take negative 0 and positive 0. So if I have 0, this is my little trick, I can write one real solution. So if there's a 0, if that's 0. And that looks something like this, where it literally touches it and goes back up. So it has the same x-intercept. And this will be a whole lesson, but this is just it's a multiple choice questions on your, what's it called, your Excel. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're going to be doing is that worksheet. Get started on that. You basically should be good. If you want extra help, like I'll take a small group if some of you guys want to work with me. And you're going to stamp on your own. So here's the answer key up here in the stamp. After that, you can choose, if you need those stamps and you know you're kind of in need, either do the scavenger hunt or you can do your iExcel, but you don't get stamps for that. That's your homework. And then we're having our mini quiz, and then agenda stamps. Get your little book together. Just get yourself together so you can get those stamps on your agenda book. Do the worksheet first, then you can do scavenger hunt.
If I do scavenger hunt first, I'm not sure.
There you will. You will, I promise. Okay. Yes. So let's get